Okay. UFC 292, Sterling versus O'Malley, going down this Saturday night at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. Here we go. We are going to talk about every fight on this card, so there's no need for me to ask you two gentlemen to spotlight any other fights or fighters because we're going to touch on all of them. So here we go. Let's start with the opening bout in the women's flyweight division between Maryna Moroz and Karine Silva. Maryna Moroz, the Iron Lady, the 31-year-old out of Ukraine, 11-4 with 6 submissions on her record, looking to hop back in the win column after losing by decision to Jennifer Maia back in November. She will be facing off against the younger prospect, Karine Killer Silva, the 29-year-old out of Brazil, 16-4 as a professional. All of her 16 wins have come by way of finish, 9 knockouts and 7 submissions. She won on Contender Series and is 2-0 thus far in the UFC. Of course, all finishes here, all submissions. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Moroz versus Silva.
All right, so yeah, I love this fight already. I love this whole card. I'm very into the two Silva fights that we have here back to back. So yeah, this one, Karine Silva is the favorite. She is -150. Maryna Moroz is +125. So pretty close odds on this one. 2 inches of height on the side of Maryna. The reach is the same. Interestingly enough, these two have actually fought before. They met back in 2014. And Maryna Moroz won by armbar in the first round. And that's actually the fight that landed her in the UFC. She had her first UFC fight in 2015 and has been here since. She's fought 10 times in the organization. Whereas Karine Silva took the complete opposite road. She went 10 more fights outside of the UFC just to get a look on Dana White's Contender Series. But she won by sub there, and she is now 2-0 in the UFC proper with 2 first-round subs. And they meet again. So this is a really good matchup. Maryna Moroz, I think, is a girl who is continually underrated. Like, she just beat Mayra Bueno Silva like a few fights ago, and I feel like no one really gives her the credit for being as high level as she is. Her grappling is just as good now as it was when she subbed Silva the first time they fought. But the difference to me is that first fight was barely a year into Karine Silva's pro career, and I think she's going to be the girl who has made more significant improvement. And just eye test to me, as much as Moroz is a nasty grappler, I actually feel like Silva looks like the slicker grappler. So I don't know if she can tap Moroz out. That's a big ask, but I think she can be the one who is able to maintain a bit more control here. So I will say Karine Silva wins a UD.
Omar?
Get ready for this nonsense right here. Karine Silva.
That's a hell of a way to start off your take.
Karine Silva, I really enjoy watching her, but there's something.
Fights off.
No. Just how crazy this pick is going to be in my take and
That's
all
right.
of this
Yeah,
stuff.
that's right.
So you're absolutely right about obviously them having fought the first time years ago, 2014, essentially like a decade ago. Not really too much I feel like you're going to want to take away from that going into this fight, I think, at this point. But what I think is interesting is if you look at the record of Karine Silva, she didn't really start hitting submissions until Maryna Moroz tapped her out. And so what it makes you wonder is, did Maryna Moroz unlock who we now know as Karine Silva? Is it possible that made her find her way to jiu-jitsu at an elite level and start choking bitches out and submitting like everywhere? Like, there are submissions all over her page after the Maryna Moroz fight. So I wouldn't be surprised at this point if her jits is better than Maryna Moroz. So I'm going to go with the bullish pick here. Round 2, submission, armbar, Karine Silva. Let's go.
That's not that crazy of a pick.
It's a little
His
crazy.
logic, the unlocking deal that he ran through.
hitting her with a submission and to get her back for the armbar loss that she had then. It's a little wild. A little wild there.
Say the odds again.
Tight. -150 Silva, +125 Moroz.
Oh.
Dude, my heart will always go out for Maryna Moroz. Dude, when she beat Maria Agapova back in March of 2022, it was only like a month or so after Russia invaded Ukraine. And then here's Maryna Moroz on a pay-per-view card, and she gets the fucking win, and she's a fucking warrior. And I remember when Bruce Buffer announced her, whatever city she's from in Ukraine, he's like, from blah 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 Ukraine, and the crowd just fucking swelled. I got chills, bro. And then she won with a finish, and then she, of course, because she won, they interview her, and I feel like it was just a different air in the arena. You could tell it's coming through the screen as I was watching this. And of course, I think at first she talked about the fight a little bit. She talked about who she had to thank maybe. And then finally she was like, I want to, shout out whoever she said shout out. She was like, my mom is still in Ukraine. And she starts to get emotional. And bro, I remember getting fucking emotional. It's like my family is still in my home country that's being bombed and invaded right now by a much bigger country. And this has nothing to do with my pick. But I'm just calling back to that moment, man. That was quite a moment in fucking history. That being said, I'm going to take Karine Silva. God damn it. I wish I could take Maryna Moroz, but I just like Silva in this matchup. It's a little bit of a case of the irresistible force against the unmovable object, because Karine Silva has won all of her fights by finish, and the Iron Lady out of Ukraine has never been finished. That being said, I think this is going to be a great fight. I think the odds reflect that, but I think Silva's going to land the harder shots, and I think she's going to have her hand raised. I think I'll split the difference, and I'll say that Karine Silva will get her first UD victory over Maryna Moroz. But God bless you, Maryna Moroz. All right, another women's bout here in the flyweight division. Andrea Lee taking on Natalia Silva. Andrea Lee, KGB, the 34-year-old out of Louisiana, USA. She's 13-7 as a pro with 8 finishes, 5 of them submission victories. Looking to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses against Viviane Araújo and Macy Barber back in March, which was a split decision loss, but even still, a loss nonetheless. Natalia Silva, the 26-year-old out of Brazil, 15-5 with 1 draw, 12 finishes, 7 of those submissions. She's riding, I believe, a 9 or 10 fight win streak, having not counted them. But quite a win streak heading into the UFC. Now 3-0 under the UFC banner. She's a beast. Omar, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm honestly having more trouble figuring out how this fight ends, not so much who ends the fight. Natalia Silva, I think, is an absolute beast. Her combos are sharp. The weight she puts behind her punches and her strikes in general are fantastic. I think her ground game is absolutely elite. But KGB's a tough out when it comes to finishing. She's not easily finished by any stretch of the imagination. She guts out a lot of the nonsense she gets put into. Submitting her is not something that happens, I think, almost ever. So I have a real trouble finding exactly how Silva's going to win this fight, because, she murders just about everybody they put in front of her, give or take. And as much as I do see her finding an opportunity to finish Andrea Lee, I don't think that it'll fully go through. And I think Andrea Lee will be able to keep herself in the fight for the full 3 rounds. But I think she gets her ass completely handed to her. So I'm going to go with Natalia Silva by unanimous decision. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 10-8 round somewhere in the course of that fight.
Yeah, I'll get my easy pick out of the way. This is an easy one for me. I'm also going to take Natalia Silva. I think she's going to keep rolling, and Andrea Lee is going to keep stumbling. This seems like a mismatch to me. I think the odds are probably going to be far apart. And I think that Natalia Silva hands Andrea Lee her first knockout loss. Give me a club and sub in round 1.
Wow.
Mark?
Wow. That'd be fucking...
I'd be surprised if any of these lines are over 1,000. I think they're all under 1,000, but probably
we're not talking that big. Natalia Silva is minus 360.
Okay.
Andrea Lee's plus 280. 2 inches of height and 4.5 inches of reach for Andrea Lee. So as high as I am on Natalia Silva, that reach for Lee really does give me some pause because she is always game and will always put hands on you. Like, even when you beat Andrea Lee clearly, you still eat punches to your face. So you factor in that reach, and maybe it's not going to be an easy night for Natalia Silva, but I am all the way in on her. I'm in on both of these up-and-coming 125-pound Silvas here that are on this card. But Natalia's been crazy impressive. I just think as this fight goes on, the speed and the power for Silva will start to make a difference. Her hand speed is ludicrous. She's super well-rounded, and I think she'll take this. And I agree. I think maybe she'll hurt Lee late, but not get her out of there, and I will say it's a UD.
Okay, let's go on now to the middleweight division. Where are we here? Okay, Andre Petroski taking on Gerald Meerschart. Here we go. Petroski, the 32-year-old out of Springfield, Pennsylvania, 9-1 as a pro with 8 finishes, 4 knockouts, and 4 submissions, riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night, undefeated under the UFC banner at 4-0. 3 out of those 4 being finishes. Most recently getting a decision win over Wellington Turman back in last November. His opponent, kind of on the opposite end of the professional experience spectrum, Gerald GM3 Meerschart, the 35-year-old out of Wisconsin, 35 wins and 16 victories. So 51 total fights in his career. 27 of those are submission victories. He has more submission victories than many guys have total fights. Looking to get back in the win column after a TKO loss against Joe Pyfer. So here we go. Mark, go first. Give us your pick and your take of Petroski versus Meerschart.
So the odds are a little wider than I anticipated. Petroski is minus 240 as the favorite. Meerschart is plus 190 as the underdog. He is 1 inch taller. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage, he being Meerschart. And I think this fight is really interesting because Petroski is going to look to wrestle. That is what he does. But if he's going to do that, he's going to need to deal with Gerald Meerschart's grappling the whole time that he's trying to work down there. And Meerschart has made a career of tapping dudes on the rise at middleweight and turning them back. Trevin Giles, Mahmoud Muradov, Bruno Silva, just to name a few. You know, this is what he does. But at the same time, Petroski has navigated grapplers like Nick Maximov and then Wellington Turman in his last 2 fights. So there's I'm sure in his mind he thinks there's no reason that he can't do the same here. And I myself am really torn on whether he can or not. I feel like it's either going to be a Petroski UD or a Meerschart sub. Petroski's never been tapped, though. His only career losses via strikes to Bellator's Aaron Jeffrey, who we were just talking about earlier. His own jiu-jitsu seems to be improving every fight, so I think I'm going to trust Petroski barely and say he wins a 29-28 UD.
Omar?
Yeah, I'm not going to rehash that because that's kind of the same route that I went down. And I kind of also landed on Andre Petroski being a wrestler who's actually pretty adept at jiu-jitsu as well. And I do think the combination of the two, considering the threats that Meerschart brings to a fight, I think it's going to be enough to keep him safe while also still allowing him to score points, striking on top and stuff like that, and having control. If there's one thing that Meerschart can do in a fight like this is stay on the bottom too long, looking for something, and then by the time you realize it, you've lost the whole round. So I definitely see that being a possibility in this fight. So I'm going to go with Petroski as well by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is going to work out to be perhaps a tough stylistic matchup for Gerald Meerschart. Meerschart's a funny guy because he had such a prolific record for his age. I mean, he has the record of a guy who's should be 44 years old and still fighting. The guy's 51 pro bouts in MMA. And what's funny is that Petroski and Meerschart are not that far apart in age, but Petroski has 10 total pro bouts, and Meerschart has 51. That being said, I like Petroski in this matchup. I think he's going to be the better striker. I think he has just enough grappling skill to sort of negate Meerschart's strong suit here, and I'll go UD for Petroski. We're unanimous for Petroski. Let's hope we're right.
We've been unanimous winner-wise on all three so far.
Oh, we have. Oh,
Steve
wow.
gives us our first curveball.
Okay, we have in the bantamweight division, Brad Katona taking on Cody Gibson. Both of these guys returning to the UFC. So Brad Superman Katona, the 31-year-old out of Winnipeg, Canada, 12-2 as a pro, 4 finishes, 3 of them submissions, riding a 4-fight win streak. His ticket back into the UFC after going, I believe, 2-2 under the UFC banner a few years ago. Cody Gibson, his opponent, the Renegade, the 35-year-old out of California, USA, 19-8 as a pro with 7 knockouts. Also returning to the UFC, I believe also 2-2, or maybe 3-1 rather, excuse me, under the UFC banner. A bit of a longer road back to the UFC, but back to the UFC he is. Both of these guys making their sort of second debut under the UFC banner. Omar, take this one first. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, man. The season of The Ultimate Fighter has been relatively decent. Some good fights here and there. There have also been some not as great fights. But I would say this season is probably better fight, more better. No, that's not English. There have been more better. The fights have been good, with the exception of a few. Just gonna go down that direction. Brad Katona has been in a few fights that have been really enjoyable to watch. I can't remember who they are off the top of my head now. I wish I had them written down, but they do have him. No, that was the last time he was in The Ultimate Fighter, not the most recent one. Anyway, Brad Katona is a really strong dude. He's positionally very, very good. His striking and his distance management is also pretty damn good. Sounds like he's been working in SBG Ireland for the longest time now. With, obviously Conor McGregor, Greg Kavanaugh, and kind of that whole bunch there. So I have a lot of faith in him. I thought he was good even when he was in his original UFC run. I thought he got a bad... I thought he ran into some opposition that I don't think he should have been cut for personally. He lost to Moroz Duashvili, which is going to fucking happen. And then he lost to somebody named Hunter Azure, which I guess is probably what got him... Well, definitely what got him the boot, but I guess from a name perspective, losing to somebody, I think, with no real value to them probably didn't look great in their eyes. So I think this is his time to shine, though. Cody Gibson is a hell of a fighter, definitely a beast, and definitely one of these gamer type guys where they like to come forward a lot. I just think out of the two of them, Cody Gibson and Brad Katona, I think both have similar amounts of experience as far as like having been in there with the really good guys and things like that. But I think while Cody Gibson, I think, has had more fights, if I'm not mistaken, a lot more fights, I think that Brad Katona is the more technical fighter. I think Cody Gibson has found a style that works for him that I'm sure he can employ, but I think Brad Katona is a little bit more technical. So I'm going to go with Katona here by unanimous decision.
All right, the odds for the tough bantamweight finale are Brad Katona minus 180 and Cody Gibson plus 145. To get here, I'll just tell you really quick since Omar was trying to think of it. Cody Gibson beat Mando Gutierrez, and then he beat Rico DeShulo. So he beat two of the, I guess, prospects, if you will call them, on the show. No UFC vets were on his path. Brad Katona beat a prospect in Carlos Vera, but then in the semifinals, he had to beat Timur Valiev, which is a very legit win. 4 inches of height and 6.5 inches of reach on the Cody Gibson side here. So that is definitely a factor. It's a tough one to call. Brad Katona is as solid as can be. Other than that Moroz loss, he's only got the one other loss that Omar mentioned. And despite being smaller in there and not being what you'd consider a terribly dangerous finisher, to put it a little lightly, he just has a knack for staying safe and controlling fights and winning rounds. He knows how to win scorecards. And Cody Gibson is going to be a really fun test because he's the much bigger guy. He's dynamic. He can finish fights with strikes or sub you. Basically, he's everything that Brad Katona isn't. And Brad Katona is everything that Cody isn't. So we're going to see who can implement their style more successfully here. I'm interested to see it. I like them both. I'm glad they're both getting a shot here. And my guess is that even the loser will probably get another fight in the UFC after this one. Katona is favored. I think he probably should be. I really debated going Gibson just from the size and finishing ability, but it just feels like Katona's going to Katona him, I think. So I will say it's a UD for Brad Katona.
Tell me the odds again.
Well, minus 180 Katona, plus 145 Gibson.
So a favorite. It's not exactly close, but it's not exactly super far apart. It's a tough one for me to pick, man. I hear what you're saying about Katona-ing people. Fuck it. I'm going to make a field pick on this one, guys. I'm going to say Cody Gibson makes it a bit of a war. Both these guys are going to be fighting their asses off because it's the finale. I'm going to say Cody Gibson. Fuck it. I'm going to say he catches him in a submission, and he gets it. He gives Katona his first submission loss. His first finish loss.
I debated it.
Yikes.
I did.
Give me round 3 submission for Cody Gibson. Bad pick. Okay, Austin Hubbard taking on Kurt Holobaugh in the lightweight division. Austin Hubbard, his nickname is Thud, out of Denver, Colorado. 15-6. He's 31 years old. 7 finishes on his record. Back-to-back wins coming into this weekend. Also making his return to the UFC. And another returner on tough, Kurt Holobaugh, the 36-year-old out of Denham Springs, Louisiana, USA. 19-7 and 1 no contest. 16 of his 19 wins have come as a finish. 9 of them are submission victories, 7 knockouts. Also back-to-back wins under the XFC banner, which I ring announced the last 2 events for XFC, and Kurt Holobaugh was supposed to be the next headliner for XFC. So I ring announced XFC 45 and 46, and he headlined 43 and 44, and he was going to headline 47. And at XFC 46, he came into the cage and faced off with what was going to be his opponent. And then COVID happened, and XFC folded like a fucking house of cards. God damn it. Hey, but that shit was on Fox. That was fucking cool.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, Mark, go first.
All right, very similar odds here to the other finale. This being the lightweight finale. Austin Hubbard is favored. He's minus 175. Kurt Holobaugh is plus 145 as the underdog. Who they beat to get here. Holobaugh beat someone from the Prospects in Lee Hammond, and then he finished Jason Knight in the semifinal, which is pretty legit. Austin Hubbard beat a prospect in Aaron McKenzie, and then he won a close split decision over Roosevelt Roberts in the semifinal. So also a good win for him to get here. There will be 1 inch of 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach for Holobaugh. They're both tough dudes. Holobaugh is, I think, more of the finisher, but I think I'm going to end up trusting the wrestling of Austin Hubbard here. Holobaugh has struggled with wrestlers before. Andre Harrison, Frodo Hasbulaev, Thiago Moises, just to name a few. And I think Hubbard can likely turn to that again here if he needs to edge these rounds out. And he could even be winning on the feet. He throws nice straight shots. Holobaugh's a little more wild, but I could see Holobaugh being the one landing harder and Hubbard just deciding to go to the wrestling. And it won't be easy there. Holobaugh's active. You know, if he's on his back, he'll be trying to create something there, but I think we get the more boring result here. I'm actually picking that in both finales, I'm just realizing. But I think that Austin Hubbard can just lean on the wrestling, kind of grind this one out, and ensure that he is going to be the lightweight tough champion. UD.
Omar?
Yeah, I also have more, excuse me, more confidence in Austin Hubbard. I think at this point, I just think he's the better fighter. You know, Kurt Holobaugh has shown a lot of improvement, I think, since he's been out of the UFC. But I just think Austin Hubbard is probably just a better fighter overall. So I'm also going to go with Austin Hubbard here, just by UD.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, the XFC is back.
Oh, really?
They just put on their first event in a couple years, and I believe they're under new ownership or new management or something like that. So good for them. They just did an event in Detroit. I was not the ring announcer. I need to try to reach out to somebody and make that happen. But they probably have somebody. And, yeah, good for them.
Nice.
That being said, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Austin Hubbard, at this point, is the better fighter. And I think it could be a great fight, though. I think Kurt Holobaugh, he fought his ass off on Tough. He's that kind of guy, though. He's like a blood and guts kind of guy.
I was just going to say, he always does. Yeah.
Dude, when I met him in Grand Rapids, he's an intense dude. Like he's a mean guy. And I mean that in the best way possible, like in the fighter sense.
Yeah.
Like, thank God this guy found martial arts. You know what I'm saying? I remember Ray Longo saying that about Chris Weidman. Like, it's a good thing this kid found martial arts because, like, yeah, he's a bad dude. Although now Chris Weidman seems like such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he does.
That being said, I'm going to take Austin Hubbard over my former fellow XFC compadre here. I'm going to say he gets it done on the scorecards. UD for Austin Hubbard, tough champ. Way to go. Okay, let's get further up this card here. In the middleweight division, Gregory Rodrigues taking on Denis Tiuliulin. So Gregory, RoboCop Rodrigues, the 31-year-old out of Brazil, 13-5 as a pro, 8 knockouts, 3 subs, looking to get back to the win column after getting knocked out with, I believe, a straight, like a jab or something by Bruno Ferreira in the first round back in January. His opponent, Denis Tiuliulin, the 35-year-old out of Moscow, Russia, 10-7 in 1-0 contest is his record. 9 of his 10 victories have come by way of knockout. He is also looking to get back in the win column after getting subbed by Junyoung Park back in February. Omar, go first. Give us your take and your pick.
So it's a good fight. I'm having a hard time picking this one, to be honest. These guys, I think, are very similar in their approaches to the fight. Just kind of juggernauts that are going to come through and try to crack until somebody gets laid out. I think it's just a matter of who do you think wins the coin flip. I'm going to go with Gregory Rodrigues. Going to go with Holobaugh just because that's my boy. So I'm going to go with Holobaugh here. I'm going to give Tiuliulin his second KO loss here, first round for Holobaugh.
I'll go next. I also like Rodrigues here. I liked him against Bruno Ferreira, to be honest. I thought he just kind of got caught, but I think that he is a rising middleweight, and I envision him getting right back on track here against a very tough guy in Denis Tiuliulin. That being said, I think he's going to finish Tiuliulin. I'm going to say he stuns him and he gets him out of there with a flurry. I'll say TKO round 2 for Holobaugh. Mark?
Yeah, he's favored. He's minus 375. Tiuliulin is plus 275 as the dog. 2 inches of height for Rodrigues, but 2 inches of reach for Tiuliulin. And to me, this might be the only fight on this card where I actually feel like one side of it, the fighter is just clearly better. And I think that's Hobocop. I think, but for people that don't know, we know his name is Robocop and not Hobocop, but he's Brazilian, so we say Hobocop. I think that he has the grappling advantage, certainly, if he ever would go that route. I know he doesn't love to. But even on the feet, I just think he's stronger and the much harder hitter. And Tiuliulin will throw down in there, which usually plays right into Hobocop's wheelhouse when people are willing to do that. So I'm going to go with Rodrigues by some type of finish. I almost want to say sub in case he ever actually did grapple, since it seems like the easier path here. But I think the more likely result is that we see some type of firefight type exchange, and Gregory Rodrigues wins it by TKO. I will say round 2.
Okay. Let's move on to the also middleweight division between Chris Weidman and Brad Tavares. Is it does he say Tavares or Tavares?
I think he says Tavares.
Tavares, okay. Chris Weidman, the All-American. What's that?
Omar's falling asleep, literally in front of our face.
I'm literally fading, but we're gonna push through it.
Dude, stand up or something. Stand up. Walk around. Do a push-up.
Omar, do you...
Should I just go shadow box?
Stand up right now and shadow box. No. Do you want to set these fights up? Would that help kind of like wake you up if you do some more talking?
I have no idea.
I think you should try it. I think that would work. Can you just give yourself a good smack in the face? That'll help you.
Dude, we'll just yell at him when it's his turn. Set him up, like, come on.
Okay. Chris Weidman, the All-American, the 39-year-old out of Baldwin, New York, 15-6 as a pro with 10 finishes, making his long-anticipated return after breaking his shin bone, was a tib-fib fracture against Uriah Hall back in April of 2021. I think probably the third leg break of its kind that I can recall in the UFC.
Why am I blanking on who the first one was?
Anderson, Connor, and Weidman.
There were more before that.
Yeah, wasn't there one before Anderson?
Yeah, there was a dude coming out of Tough. I forget his name now, but he was the first one to like go viral for snapping his leg in half.
Yeah, I feel like there was someone.
It's crazy that's not like a super uncommon injury to happen, and that's so gruesome.
I hate it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
And what sucks about Weidman's is that it was the very first thing that happened in the fight.
Yeah.
I think it's the first strike he threw. I don't think Uriah had even attempted to throw a strike at that point. It was 17 seconds into the fight. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
Bro, and he said the bone popped out of the back.
But Chris Weidman, being the fucking warrior that he is, he said, "This is not the end. I will rehab and I will come back." And that is what he has done. And now, this Saturday, he will face off against Brad Tavares, who is the 35-year-old out of Hawaii, which is going through some shit right now. 19-8 as a pro. 7 finishes, 5 of them knockouts. Looking very much to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses against DDP and Bruno Silva back in April. Omar, wake up and go first. Give us your take and your pick.
Chris Weidman is an interesting character. Like we talk about guys who have their careers have kind of gone in a different direction from where they were at and the trajectory they were going on. And at one point, Chris Weidman was like at the height of the middleweight division, right? The first guy to knock out Anderson Silva, the first guy to frankly beat Anderson Silva in the UFC, did it twice. Started being the guy that we expected to beat the legends, of the Brazilian era. And then he ran into Luke Rockhold, and Luke Rockhold like ruined his whole life. And he has not been the same since he threw that spinning back kick and missed and got taken down to the ground and got punched out. His record has suffered significantly since then. Basically every one of his losses obviously has been in the UFC. And I think what concerns me more than anything are his performances, because apart from the leg injury, when it comes to the way he fights, he doesn't like to get hit. And he doesn't respond well to getting hit hard and to getting hit cleanly. And that probably sounds really fucking dumb. Like, who does respond well to it? But
some guys do.
But there are guys who don't really let it phase them, right? Chris Weidman has a really bad habit sometimes of like wincing, closing his eyes, doing a lot of extra things in there as a result of the shot itself. And obviously fear is involved and things like that. But I think for him, especially once you start getting to the higher elite levels here, that stuff plays, especially to strikers. No way Adesanya doesn't look at that and just think it's pure dessert for when he strikes, right? Like guys just biting and eating and doing all kinds of extra movements they don't need to be doing that you can time and take advantage of. I just don't know if Brad Tavares is at that level. And I think that's why I like this fight so much, because it does give Chris Weidman a chance to kind of show a good accounting of himself and to see where he's at, how his recovery is gone. Is he better than what he was before? Is he the same? Is he worse? And I think Brad Tavares is a perfect litmus test for it. I'm going to stick with Chris Weidman. I think I'm probably going to be on that boat until the wheels fall off, even though we're like riding a car on like one wheel at this point. But I'm going to stick with Weidman until the end. So I'm going to go with Weidman here by submission round 3.
Mark.
So Weidman is a plus 215 underdog. Brad Tavares is minus 275. 1 inch of height and 4 inches of reach on the Chris Weidman side of things. And look, I will tell you what this is right off the bat. There is no chance in the world that I pick against the man Chris Weidman as he makes his return from this type of injury. I'm not even putting a Chris Weidman loss out there in the world. So my pick is Chris Weidman. I will tell you that the striking of Brad Tavares is absolutely something that could give problems to this older version of Weidman. I will also tell you that Tavares' absurd balance on one leg and also balance against the cage could play a big factor in keeping him upright in this fight. But again, I am doing all I can do to put good vibes out there into the world for Weidman, so I'm going to say that he finds a takedown, has an easier time than you would think controlling Brad Tavares on the mat, and ends up choking him out. Chris Weidman, round 1, submission.
Damn.
Man, I wish
if we're fucking going for it, we might as well just go for it.
You're right. You're right. I will make a somewhat more conservative pick. I think he better, goddammit, use his wrestling in this fucking fight. I'm going to say that he does. And I'm going to say that he's going to manufacture a win. I want Chris Weidman to get a fucking win. So I think he's going to utilize his wrestling. I don't see him finding a choke or anything like that. I think Brad Tavares is well-rounded enough to stay away from that. But I think that Weidman wins convincingly enough on the cards, walks away with a UD either 30-27 or 29-28. All 3 cards. Let's go, Team America. Come on. Even though Brad Tavares is also American.
America.
Okay, boys.
Yeah.
Things are getting spicy.
World, yeah.
Things are getting crunchy here on this pay-per-view card. In the bantamweight division, Marlon Chito Vera taking on Pedro, the young Punisher Munhoz. Chito Vera, the 30-year-old out of Ecuador, 20-8 with 1 draw, 16 finishes, 8 knockouts, and 8 submissions. Looking to get back in the win column after losing a split decision to Corey Sandhagen back in March. Pedro Munhoz, the young Punisher, the 36-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, 20-7 with 2 no contests, 13 finishes on his record, 8 of those submission wins. Won his last fight against Chris Gutierrez back in April. Omar, would you like to begin?
Sure. Why not? I actually find this fight really fun. I enjoy Chito Marlon Vera. I enjoy Pedro Munhoz. I just think Pedro Munhoz is in a really shitty position. He hasn't won a ton of fights recently. He won his last fight against Chris Gutierrez, which was one of those fights where, like, if you didn't win against him, like, what are we doing? So he was at least able to kind of answer the question that I'm not done yet, but at the same time, what more should I be expecting at this point from him in his career? And I think, the opposite of that with Chito Marlon Vera is I kind of expect the world now from Chito Martin Vera or Marlon Vera, because he's been doing so well. His momentum is great. I think the evolution of him as a fighter has been like apparent across his career. And I think he's finally gotten to a place now where even though if you watch him in his fights, he may not always be winning the fight, but he seems to find avenues to victory one way or the other. I think he's going to be able to do that here against Pedro Munhoz. I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think it's actually, based on all the other fights he's had, it's probably going to be the toughest fight that he's going to have. And I think one of the reasons is because Pedro Munhoz is a little bit of a tank when it comes to absorbing damage and taking and still kind of coming forward on top of taking shots. And it's very possible that Marlon Vera becomes a little too tentative. He has a bad habit of almost starting slow and waiting and not necessarily taking control of the fight the way that I think he can and should. But I'm going to go Marlon Vera here. I think it will be, again, a close fight, but I think he scrapes by 2 rounds to at least 1. So I'm going to go with unanimous decision.
I'll go next. I think that this has the makings to be a sneaky, tough fight for Marlon Vera for exactly that reason, because he's a bit of a slow starter. Although it's not even like Marlon Vera is like a slow starter and then becomes like a faster guy. He just kind of he plods forward. I mean, he's incredible. He's a I love that word you used earlier, Omar, in the program here. He's a programmer. Programmer? You said programming? When we're talking about the Khalil Roundtree fight.
Yeah. He programmed that sequence for sure, and that reaction, yeah.
But like I said, I think this has the makings for a tricky stylistic fight for Vera, because Pedro Munhoz is not someone to sleep on here. And you know what I'm going to do, guys? You know what I'm going to do? I wonder what the odds are. I'm going to take Pedro Munhoz. I think Pedro Munhoz gets out of here with a decision victory over Marlon Vera. And Marlon Vera is going to be like, golly.
Probably going to be a little bit more aggressive than that.
The odds are that Marlon Vera is minus 200 as the favorite. Pedro Munhoz is plus 165. 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach for Marlon Chito Vera. And I think I'm going to lean on that size advantage to help me make my decision in this one, because I think it's very close. I'm a little surprised the odds are even that wide. Pedro Munhoz is really good, and as we always say, the man will rip your calf to shreds with kicks, so Chito is going to have to be prepared for that. And Chito, as we have discussed plenty of times, is frustrating as all hell with the way that he chooses to approach fights. And in his last fight with Corey Sandhagen, we saw the worst possible example of that in terms of his inactivity. Granted, Munhoz is not Sandhagen, so he shouldn't be quite as tricky of a puzzle. But I'm still very tentative to pick a guy who we have seen be as inactive in the cage at times as we've seen from Chito. But it's that size advantage that I think is going to let me do it. 2 inches of height, 5.5 inches of reach. Chito always feels like a big bantamweight. And I think those advantages, plus a potential desire to close kicking range, will maybe make Chito more active in this fight. I don't see why he wouldn't be willing to lean on that reach and look to put hands on Pedro Munhoz. And I'm going to trust that he will do that. If he doesn't do that, I don't even know when I will feel safe enough to pick Vera in a fight again. But I will go Vera. Munhoz is crazy durable, though. So I will say 29-28 UD for Chito.
Okay, bantamweights again. Damon Blackshear against Mario Bautista. Blackshear, the Monster, is the nickname. 29 years old, out of North Carolina. 14-5 as a pro. Coming off back-to-back wins. Most recently against Jose Johnson back in August. Mario Bautista, the 30-year-old out of Phoenix, Arizona, 12-2 as a pro with 6 subs on his record, riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Omar, please go first. What's so funny?
That I look like I'm fucking dying over here.
That's why you go first.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Blackshear here, man. I thought he made a really good accounting of himself in his last fight against Jose Johnson. Obviously, submitting somebody with a twister in this day and age is still rare bear, so you don't see it very often here. And I think Blackshear's ground game, I think, is pretty damn legit. Bautista, though, is not a slouch. He has finished a lot of guys in the UFC at this point, regardless of their records or their credentials or whatever. Like, he's still racking up finishes in the UFC. So it's definitely going to be a good fight. I think if I had to guess and really make a pick here, I think I'm going to stick with Blackshear here. And I do think that one of these guys is coming away with a submission victory, but I'm going to go with Blackshear here. Second round submission.
I agree. I think the odds are going to be close, but I like Blackshear here. I loved his last two performances, especially against over Lacerda and Johnson, both finishes, most recently with a twister, by the way. So let's keep going with Damon Blackshear. I think he gets it done. I'll say UD for Blackshear. Mark?
The odds may be wider than you think. Mario Bautista is minus 225. Damon Blackshear is plus 185 as the underdog. Blackshear is 1 inch taller. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Turns around on 1 week notice, which is pretty wild. But he gets himself a pretty tough puzzle to solve here in Mario Bautista because he is just so well-rounded, man. He'll hurt you on the feet to all levels. He's a pit bull in the wrestling. He's got slick grappling. And Blackshear's no slouch in any of those departments either. I get you guys going with him, but I just think Bautista may be a bit higher level everywhere. I've been really impressed with him thus far in the UFC. He had earned the step up that he was getting in Cody Garbrandt. Unfortunately, he loses that step up now, but I think he still gets himself a nice win on pay-per-view and hopefully positions himself for a big fight in his next one. I will say Mario Bautista by decision.
Okay, moving on now to the welterweights. Good God, it is late. Neil Magny taking on Ian the Future Garry. Neil, the Haitian sensation Magny, the 36-year-old out of Brooklyn, 28-10 as a pro, most recently defeated Phil Rowe by split decision very recently, back in June. And he is stepping up to face Ian Garry, whose opponent, I'm blanking for a second. Jeff Neal. Pulled out due to injury? Or unknown?
Yeah, some type of injury, he said, right?
Some type of injury?
No, so according to Ian Garry was like, when you break a hand or you break a rib like Curtis did, you ask other people what happened, they're all going to tell you that Chris Curtis broke a rib. Apparently, Ian Garry has gotten like 4 different answers as to what has happened to Jeff Neal. And he even apparently told his wife weeks ago that he didn't think Jeff Neal was going to show up to the fight.
Yeah, he's been saying that.
So it sounds like...
But we haven't heard the actual answer how to get out of Neal's camp?
Nope.
That would have been such a good fight.
Yeah,
Something tells me it's not a good reason. Just not.
Let's not pretend like a guy like...
Yeah, I don't think that at all. I'm sure he's got something.
Is like afraid to fight somebody.
Jeff Neal's a beast.
I wouldn't necessarily say afraid, but it doesn't sound like something's like... It doesn't sound like something needs surgery. Like, Ian Garry was not amused with because Ian Garry supposedly knows, or at least what was told from Hunter in a phone call that, he put on the internet, that viral video that went out of him receiving the phone call. But they bleeped out what it was. And Ian Garry was not impressed. So.
Okay. All right. Well, Ian Garry, he's 25 years old. He's fighting out of Dublin, Ireland. He is undefeated, 12-0. 8 of those 12 wins, finishes 7 of them knockouts. Most recently knocking out or TKOing D-Rod, Daniel Rodrigues, back in May. Mark, go first this time.
I was trying to look on Twitter to see what I saw. I don't see anything. All right. Odds are wide. Ian Garry is starting to get his respect. He is minus 500. Neil Magny is plus 370.
Wow, disrespect.
Same height here, but 6 inches of reach for Neil Magny. So he'll be back to having his usual reach advantage that he missed in his last fight against Phil Rowe. And Magny's a great test. Obviously we've said this plenty of times. He really is a great gatekeeper to the welterweight top 10. He can strike. He can make it ugly. He can wrestle. He can tap you. He's a well-rounded guy that a lot of up-and-coming welterweights have not been able to figure out. But I think Ian Garry will do just that, and I think he is going to do it in style. I think Ian Garry's game is evolving another level up with each matchup as he has ascended up this welterweight division. I really feel like he's one of these guys that got to the UFC at the exact right time, and that his progression of opponent thus far has matched up perfectly with his own progression of skill. And I think we see another display from Ian Garry here. Plus, Magny taking this on short notice is not easy to prepare for a guy who moves the way Ian Garry does and sets traps the way that he does. So I think Garry shines. I think he freezes Neil Magny a couple times with a couple beautiful shots, and then I think he puts Neil Magny down to make a big statement. I am going to say it is a round 2 knockout for Ian Garry.
I totally agree with just about everything you said in that take. Neil Magny is a nice matchup. Both of these guys probably are not used to fighting guys who are their exact height, and they're both listed at 6'3". So that could present interesting dynamics in this fight in both directions. That being said, I think it's more so for Magny because he could and maybe will rely on a bit more grappling or attempting to get the fight there. But I think he'll be like, this guy is a bit bigger than I'm used to going up against at 170. I think Ian Garry is going to resist the takedown. And I think on the feet, he is going to continue to shine against Neil Magny, who is good everywhere, but perhaps not great on the feet as much as Garry is. I'll say, I'll follow suit with Mark, and I'll say round 2 knockout or TKO for the future, Ian Garry. Omar,
you're up, bud. Stay awake.
I like Ian Garry here, man. Ian Garry is... It's very difficult, I think, for me right now to pick against Ian Garry. I love the personality. I love the style. I love the approach to the game. I love how technical he is in the octagon. And, Neil Magny is really good everywhere. I don't think he's great or I would even say elite in any one specific area. I'd probably argue that his jiu-jitsu is probably the best aspect of his game compared to everything else that he has, but I think everything is pretty solid. There's just nothing extra about it, right? It's almost like the fundamentals that they're at their sharpest to a certain extent. Ian Garry's got more tools in the box. He's just so good at using them, so good at knowing when to bring them out. His kicks come right underneath, right from the right past the elbow, right into the body. Like the way he snaps his kicks is really, really nice. I'm gonna go with Ian Garry here, man. And honestly, I think he can stop Neil Magny. I think he hits him to a body shot that just puts him down. I'm gonna go with a second round Ian Garry body kick, wow. TKO.
We all picked second round finish. That's interesting.
Funny. Okay, co-main event time, gentlemen. We have for the women's strawweight championship, Weili Zhang taking on Amanda Lemos. So Weili Zhang, Magnum, the 34-year-old out of China, 23-3 with 19 finishes, 11 of them knockouts. Most recently defeating Carla Esparza. That was for the belt, the one against Esparza? Yeah, she took it from Esparza, right?
Yes, correct.
Back last November. This is her first title defense then against Amanda Lemos. Amandinha is her nickname, the 36-year-old out of Brazil. 13-2 as a pro with 1 draw. 8 wins by knockout. Coming off back-to-back wins against Michelle Waterson Gomez and Maryna Rodrigues, most recently back in November. Omar, go first.
Another solid fight, man. I like Lemos, but I just think Weili is just so sharp in there, so technical, and I think she has a real comfort in her distance management as well as her ground game and being able to take things down to the ground and work from the bottom, or work from the top, I should say, on bottom. So I think Weili's gonna have a little bit more success. I think it probably gets more difficult for Lemos to get things off the more that this fight goes on. I think Lemos is going to be the most dangerous in round 1. And I think that's when she really has her puncher's chance to potentially put Weili out in the middle of a crazy exchange. But if it doesn't happen in round 1, I don't really see Weili Zhang being able to be run over by Lemos or even caught by Lemos, really. I just think she's a little too technical. So I'm going to go with Weili Zhang here. I'm going to go with unanimous decision on this one.
For Weili?
For Weili. Mm-hmm.
Dude, I think that Weili continues to roll here and continues to shine in her career. I think she is on another level. I think Amanda Lemos, for the division, for the strawweight division, she is one of the hardest hitters, but in terms of technique, I think she's going to be outmatched by Weili Zhang. And I say that Weili Zhang shines in her first title defense back with the belt and gets Amanda Lemos out of there. I will say she finishes her, I'll say round 2. With strikes, TKO.
Strikes. Okay, she is a bit more than a 3-1 favorite. She is minus 320, that being Weili, the champ. Amanda Lemos is plus 250 as the underdog. The heights are the same here. The challenger will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Look, Amanda Lemos is dangerous as hell. She's a beast for sure, and the power is real, but I am just not sold on her as a championship-level fighter. I never have been. So I'll have to eat my words if she pulls this off, but to me, everything favors Weili. I mean, think about the way we saw Weili exchange with girls like Joanna. I think her technique is at a higher level than Lemos is on the feet. I also think her power is a big factor here, since we saw the way that Lemos had to kind of dial back that march him down style the one other time she fought a knockout threat, which was when she fought Jessica Andrade. And Weili is certainly that as well. And then I think the grappling could potentially be a big check in the corner of Weili here as well. I think she can drag Lemos down. I think she can control her. And really, I just think she can control this fight. And maybe the biggest point of all, which I didn't even think of, is that as long as Weili gets through the first 10 or 15 minutes, I trust her cardio in rounds 4 and 5 way more than I trust Lemos' cardio. So even if she did happen to somehow be down 2-1, I think she probably still gets those last 2 rounds if that's what it has to come down to. But I'm going to say we see a late submission from Weili Zhang. I will say round 4, rear naked choke.
Okay. All right, boys. Main event time, and then it's bedtime for Daddy.
I can't wait. I have to be up so early tomorrow, way earlier than usual after our show. This is miserable.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make this fast. The Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling, defending his bantamweight title again, this time against Sugar Sean O'Malley. So Sterling is the 34-year-old out of Cortland, Long Island, New York, 23-3 as a pro, 8 subs on his record. A stupid win streak. I believe it is the longest win streak in bantamweight history right now. Most recently defending the belt against Henry Cejudo back in May. Sean O'Malley, the 28-year-old out of Helena, Montana, 16-1 with 1 no contest, 11 knockouts. Most recently defeating Petr Yan by split decision back in October. Mark, first, give us your take and your pick, but first give us those odds.
Aljo, minus 250. Sean O'Malley, plus 200. 4 inches of height for O'Malley, as we know he is the taller man. 1 inch of reach for him as well. Sean O'Malley's really good. His timing is otherworldly. His ability to land shots is second to none. He is longer. He will find openings on the feet for as long as they're on the feet. And he does have solid grappling defense from what we've seen thus far. Like, look at the way he was able to get up against Petr Yan. But with all that said, I just think the size, the strength, and the truly elite level of wrestling and grappling of Aljamain Sterling may be too much. And it really is interesting because whenever Aljo does have to reset on the feet, I think he has a harder time dealing with what O'Malley brings than with what a Yan or a Cejudo brought necessarily, just because of the way O'Malley can set things up and how sharp his timing is. But with that said, it has to be all boxing from O'Malley because knees and kicks feel like way too much of a risk in this particular matchup when he has to do all he can to keep Aljo from grabbing a hold of him. So he's going to be a bit limited there, and I just think Aljo's grappling is that elite that he can make it so that none of this matters. I think he can take O'Malley down more than once if that's what it takes. And I think his control is just abnormal, to put it bluntly. Like, I could see him beat O'Malley up a bit on the ground, either from, like, mount or back mount, or some situation where, like, an arm is trapped for O'Malley, something like that, and then just eventually wrap up a choke and get him out of there. So I am going to say round 2 rear naked choke for Aljamain Sterling to retain. I won't be shocked if O'Malley pulls something off, to be clear. I really won't. But sure. I am rolling with Aljo. Round 2 sub.
I'll go next. I agree. I think this could be a very close fight. And I would love, don't get me wrong, I would love for that to happen. Both of these guys are winners. Let's get that straight. I think they both have only lost once or twice each. So that comes down to a stylistic matchup then. Like the styles, I think O'Malley's in trouble, to be honest. Would I be surprised if he pulls off some magical knockout? Not really. But I have to go with the smart pick here. Aljamain Sterling by submission via rear naked choke or something like that. Or a UD by control. But for my official pick, I'll say submission round 3 for Sterling and still.
Omar, you made it to the end.
Omar, you made it, buddy.
Yes, sir. I think this is a terrible matchup for O'Malley. I think O'Malley obviously has, that sniper kind of style to him.
He does.
But if you've ever played Call of Duty, really hard to shoot people directly in front of you and on top of you with the sniper rifle. Like, it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very well. So this is kind of the same thing, man. I think the distance management is not really going to be in Sean O'Malley's favor, because I think at any point, Aljamain doesn't really stay in one place very long. The dude is kind of all over the place. He cuts angles a ton, probably way more than a lot of people in the UFC do as a whole. And I think his striking is criminally underrated. I think him not throwing power shots or the type of cracking shots that will knock somebody out. I think the reason, or I think him not doing that is one of the reasons why I think his striking is underrated. But the reality is his striking sets up a lot of the way that his fights work out for himself, whether it is landing a strike that works or whether it's setting up a takedown. I think the constant movement and the constant volume is what always has people uncomfortable in there against him. On top of the fact that it sounds like when he gets on top of you, he sounds like one of the strongest people that's on top of you. And the weight sounds like it's a problem as well. So, I think Aljamain just has more tools to utilize in this. I think his ground game is just too elite to not go to it and not take advantage of it. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean O'Malley has literally been drilling, getting his back taken and just surviving for forever, just to make sure that he's comfortable in that position, because I have a feeling that's where Aljamain is going to want to live, is just on O'Malley's back, body triangle set up, and just constantly swimming, punching, and looking for rear naked chokes. So I'm going to go to Aljamain Sterling here. I don't know if he gets Sean O'Malley out of there. I think he should, based on his pedigree, but O'Malley's a tough dude, man. And I definitely don't want to take anything away from him. But I'm going to go with Aljamain Sterling here. I think I'm going to go round 4 submission.